Greetings to all peoples and kingdoms of Arda, and welcome to Shieldmanias of Arda. On September 21st, 1937, The Hobbit was first published to the world. It quickly became a popular book for children, and to this day remains a beloved children's classic. But are the tales of Bilbo Baggins and his adventure really a childish story meant only for entertainment and amusement, or is there something much deeper to the story and the character? Today, we're going to examine the character of Bilbo Baggins and discover the intricacies that make up his story, his journey, and how he came back quite a different hobbit from what he once was, and what that can mean for us today. So sit back and let this shield maiden be your guide into the wonderful world of Middle-earth. We meet Bilbo Baggins in the very first pages of The Hobbit, where Tolkien clearly states the hero of his story's manner of life and the particulars that make him what he is. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the end of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing to sit down on or eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. Bilbo Baggins, then, the hero of our story, is well established in the next page or so as being a wealthy, respectable, comfortable hobbit, enjoying a life full of simplicity and structure. There was nothing to take him by surprise. There was nothing to interrupt his quiet routine of life. There was nothing to upset his cozy existence of fireplaces and pocket handkerchiefs and tea time. There was nothing wrong with any of this, of course, and Tolkien does not mean to imply that there is. But there was a fine line to be drawn when it comes to security and complacency, and I believe that this is what Tolkien is trying to suggest. Bilbo was a happy, content hobbit because he had no one to worry about. He lived by himself, unmarried, probably unwilling to be, and very happy to let the world go by and himself sit back and watch it. The problem with this viewpoint is that none of us were made to simply watch the world go by. We were created to help our neighbor, to make a difference where we can, even if it may be within our own little corner of the world. Throughout the story that unfolds in the following pages, Bilbo Baggins is shown as becoming a hobbit enclosed in his own world and his own wants and needs, to broadening his horizons in physical, emotional, and spiritual ways. Gandalf shows up at Bilbo's house and begins by setting some uncomfortable questions in his mind, suggestions about adventures, and reminders about friends he actually used to know, himself, for example. Needless to say, Bilbo finds a way to remove himself from the conversation, but Gandalf has set things in motion, and they cannot be stopped now. Bilbo may very well blame himself for getting mixed up in an adventure, for if he had a very definite fault, it is that of being overly polite. When a parade of dwarves show up on his doorstep, he cannot bring himself to say no. Before he knows it, there was a whole company of dwarves inside his house, with Gandalf at their head, and they are planning an adventure with himself as the 14th member of it. Protest as he might, Gandalf, in his own clever way, made certain that he was where he needed to be when he needed to be, and before Bilbo knew what was happening, he was setting out with a bunch of dwarves to find a lonely mountain. Gandalf was indeed quite clever. Knowing that Bilbo was first of all overly polite, he arranged it so that the hobbit would risk upsetting guests and such if he refused entrance to Thorin's company. Thus, he was in a position to hear and understand the exact magnitude of the adventure he was to set out on. Then, Gandalf played upon his easily flustered nature to allow himself to accept the quest and rush out the door after the dwarves, having no time for mourning of his homely comforts. Gandalf knew all along that he was an excitable little fellow, gets funny, queer fits, but he is one of the best, as fierce as a dragon in a pinch. But Gandalf was not willing to let Bilbo suffer wholly. He bought Bilbo's pocket handkerchiefs and some pipe and tobacco for comfort, when at last he joined the company, and so they set off on a very unexpected adventure. Bilbo's character was tested nearly right away. There was rain, there was mud, the pony was tired, the landscape gloomy. Bilbo spent a good deal of time complaining. That night when they made camp, they found that Gandalf was missing, and that did not help the mood at all. Yet despite his grumbling, Bilbo was a good hobbit at heart, and quite braver than he may have known, and he got his first chance that night to discover exactly that. With Gandalf gone, the dwarves were bound to end up in some sort of trouble, and they did. Trolls took them all captive, and were on the verge of eating them, and would certainly have done so had not Gandalf stepped in the nick of time. This little foray into danger broadened the immediate horizons of our little hobbit, allowing him to see and experience danger, and a taste of what the rest of the journey might hold. As Bilbo continues his journey, we see how the challenges continue to test him and get more demanding. The company comes to the elven haven of Adventurous, or Rivendell. This in itself is a challenge, for now Bilbo is able to rest and relax, and take in comforts and security he had been missing. It is here that Bilbo's inner journey of having his eyes open to more than himself and his own world truly begins. The elves in Tolkien's works are always shown as seeing more, seeing beyond, and this new way of understanding the world around him is imparted in some measure to Bilbo. It is hard for him to leave the beautiful valley of Rivendell and set out again into the cold darkness of the mountains, even if Elrond had placed some growing excitement in his heart by explaining to him the meaning of the secret message hidden within the map. The desire for adventure wars with the longing for home and comfort, and as they get caught between a stone giant battle, that desire can only grow deeper. What might be called the discerning point for Bilbo happens soon after this. The dwarves and Bilbo attempt to find shelter in a cave that ends up being the gateway to a goblin kingdom. The entire company is captured and carried off to the Goblin King, and if Gandalf had not appeared at that moment, they most certainly would have been slain. As they were hauling out of the goblin tunnels, Bilbo fell from the back of the dwarf that had been carrying him, and ended up in a much deeper and much darker place, the abode of Gollum. This scene may well be the best in both book and movie. The tension that is felt between a hobbit fighting for his life and a fallen, wretched creature that was once a hobbit, fighting to fulfill his own desires, brought on by his continual plunge into darkness and greed, is masterfully portrayed here. We feel every moment the confrontation that must erupt between hobbit and hobbit. Bilbo was forced here to make decisions and judgments that his mind is unused to, and in the process becomes suddenly braver and stronger and a better hobbit because of it. The moment when he decides to spare Gollum's life is the moment when Bilbo passes from creature of comfort and self-desire to that of understanding the wider world around him. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. And it is at this time that Bilbo finds the One Ring, and in gaining that, he finds a new battle in his heart, warring against him at times, desiring to use the ring for trickery and deceit, and at the same time understanding that it may be an instrument to save his life and those around him. With new courage and new fortune, Bilbo finds he is facing new temptations and desires as well. Bilbo emerges from the caves to find the dwarves, and that very night they are attacked by wolves. It seems like danger in one form or another is around every corner, reminding Bilbo that the world is so much larger than his little hobbit hole, keeping his courage ever at the forefront of his little heart, and building the spirit of the company together as they push on, making friends, braving danger, until it seems at last that their efforts are in vain, for they are captured once again, this time by the hideous spiders of Mirkwood. Bilbo has now enough courage rallied within him that he took his own life in his hands and set forth to free his friends, the dwarves. Bilbo saw that the moment had come when he must do something. There was courage in him now, Turkish courage, but there was wit and cleverness as well, and Bilbo did not charge with foolhardy abandon into the fray, but used his ring, his sword, and his quick mind to trick the spiders and free the dwarves. They had hardly any time to thank the little hobbit, though, for they are captured again, this time by elves. This situation proves more difficult to get out of. Bilbo was forced once again to rely on his quick mind and wits to concoct a plan, and a daring one it is at that. The hobbit tricks the king's own elves and secures the dwarves and beowulfs to float downstream to the human village of Lake Town. There they are taken as celebrities, the return of the king under the mountain. With help from the Lake Town people, the company is finally on the final stretch to the lonely mountain. They reach the mountain to find a door locked before them and no conceivable way to get in. Tolkien describes a hopeless situation. They were alone in a perilous waste, without hope of further help. They were at the end of their journey, but as far as ever seemed from the end of their quest. None of them had much spirit left. Now, strange to say, Mr. Baggins had more than Ethels. And why is this so? Is this because he has been so often engulfed in the clutches of danger, and then as often rescued from them, that he thought himself lucky? Or had his little hobbit mind been open to the world around him and allowed him to see beyond the despair? Was he starting to understand the wider world and those who dwelt in it, those who needed his help, his hope, his clever and quick mind? Perhaps it was all of these. Whatever the case, it was Bilbo who held out to the end with hope and courage, and Bilbo who solved the puzzle of the moonwings, and who called out to those who were too despairing to see it. And so they entered the darkness of the lonely mountain together. As Bilbo continues to gain courage and strength throughout the course of the story, we are shown more and more the sometimes selfish and manipulative ways of the dwarves. Now is the time for our esteemed Mr. Baggins, who has proved himself a good companion on a long road, and a hobbit full of courage and resource far exceeding his size, and if I may say so, possessed of good luck far exceeding the usual allowance. Now is the time for him to perform the service for which he was included in our company. Now is the time for him to earn his reward. Thus saith Thorn to Bilbo, as if he hadn't done enough already, getting them out of quite a few trouble spots along the way. Bilbo by this time is ready to defend himself, and although he accepts the dangerous task of going below to seek out the dragon in the mountain, he displays his true courage and understanding before them all, and then turns and walks into the heart of the mountain. Perhaps the encounter with Gollum was meant to serve as a test case for Bilbo's encounter with Smaug the dragon. Both adversities certainly seem to prefer verbal challenges to outright physical confrontations. Bilbo by now has had lots of experience in tricky situations and uses them to his advantage to trick and confuse the dragon to gain inside information, as well as assess the situation before them. Unfortunately, Mr. Baggins' bravado also earned Lake Town a visit from the dragon as well, and that very night Smaug set the waterside town to flames, and if it had not been for the courage of the bowman Bard, the dragon might have gone on to destroy other realms of Middle-earth. But Smaug was killed and sank into the black waters of Lake Town, and the gold that was hoarded was free at last to go to its rightful owners. At least that was the way it was supposed to work. Smaug was not the only enemy that had to be conquered, it turned out. Gold and wealth, especially after it had been hoarded by a dragon, was in danger of bestowing upon its possessor what is called by Tolkien dragon sickness, an obsessive desire for more, a corrupting of the person's character, turning what was once honorable and honest into selfish and mean-spirited. That is what befell Thorn. He turned against the good people of Lake Town, those who had given him aid and help in his time of need. And when the elves came to stand beside the people of Lake Town on the plain, it seemed inevitable that a three-sided war would break out. However, Bilbo, ever the peacemaker, had a bargaining chip up his sleeve. While wandering through the heart of gold, he had come upon the Arkenstone, the most precious of all the jewels the dwarves possessed. And strangely enough, Bilbo takes it for himself. This poor chance for hiding things, for discovering and stowing away valuable objects, whether that be the one ring from Gollum or the Arkenstone, is a strange habit of our little hobbit. In this case, we might think of Smaug and how he tried to plant seeds of doubt in Bilbo's mind regarding the dwarves and their intentions, and so Bilbo takes the Arkenstone as collateral against the promised share of the wealth the dwarves promise him. Throughout the tense days that follow, with elves and dwarves and men ready to fight each other and sending threats to the other side, Bilbo keeps it hidden. Until one night he sneaks undetected out of the mountain and finds the camp of the Lake Town men and the Mirkwood elves. Despite what one might feel about Bilbo taking and keeping the Arkenstone in the first place, at least here he tried to put it to good use. He gives the stone to Bard the bowman in the hopes that he might use it to bargain a peace treaty with Thorin Oakenshield. Gandalf meets him as he hurries back to the dwarves, telling him, as only Gandalf can, "You may come through all right." Bilbo's courage is sustained as he hurries back to stand with the dwarves as the sun rises. But Thorin has been overcome by the curse the dragon laid upon the goat, and he is determined to fight to the very last dwarf to regain and keep all of the wealth. In a rage, he sends Bilbo away, and indeed it looks as if elves, dwarves, and men will face each other in battle, when they are united to fight a common foe, the goblins, led by Bog of the North. One might wonder if Gandalf had some hand in summoning these forces of darkness, in an effort to unite the three races and defeat darkness at the same time. With help from the eagles, the goblins are defeated, although not without a price being paid by those who defeated them. Thorin Oakenshield is slain, and before his death he calls Bilbo to his side and utters these words, which will live on forever in the hearts of Tolkien fans everywhere. There is more in you of good than you know, child of the kindly West. Some courage and some wisdom, blended in measure. If mortals valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, the world would be merrier. Thus, even as Bilbo learned to embrace danger and courage in his own heart, so Thorin learned to embrace the simple and the homely. The adventure was nearly over by this point. Bilbo got his share of the wealth. He bid goodbye to the dwarves, telling them, "If ever you are passing my way, don't wait to knock. Tea is at 4, but any of you are welcome at any time." Indeed, he had learned the most important lesson of all. Friendship is Ilúvatar's gift to mankind. If we do not have it, then what is anything else worth? Bilbo Baggins returned to his home, quite happy to be there, but quite a different hobbit from the one who left. He understood now that home and comfort were beautiful and good things to have, but only if you can help others to have them as well. He lost his reputation as an ordinary respectable hobbit, but, as Tolkien says, I am sorry to say that he did not mind. He was quite content, and he remained very happy to the end of his days, and those were extraordinarily long. So what might we take from Bilbo's journey? Are we expected to go out and fight dragons and stuff our friends into barrels to escape elven dungeons? No, indeed. The story of Bilbo is essentially our story. It is the story of the little, everyday things we take for granted. It is the story of those everyday opportunities when we have to rise above ourselves and help those who may have no one else. It is making that hard decision, determined to keep hope and courage just a little bit longer. It is understanding that ourselves and our world is only a small portion of all that is out there. Bilbo himself, in the movie version of The Hobbit, may have said it best.
Look, I know you doubt me. I know you always have. And you're right, I often think of Bag End. I miss my books. And my armchair, my garden. See, that's where I belong. That's home. And that's why I came back, because you don't have one. A home. It was taken from you. But I will help you take it back if I can.
Thank you for joining with me today through the Word of Arda. I found this character study to be a bit challenging, so I hope it didn't come across as simply a retelling of the entire Hobbit book, and I apologize if it did. Happy Hobbit Day to everyone, and I would love to hear in the comments if Bilbo's journey inspired you in some particular way. Please like this video, subscribe to Shieldmaidens, and join us again so we can explore more of Middle-earth together. Namaste.